The general scheme of the Sith Grand Plan is widely known among Star Wars fans for obvious reasons, as it is central to the plot of the prequels. But for some, questions have likely arisen on some of the finer points. Why, for example, would Count Dooku have gone along with a plan that would have clearly resulted in his death? In this video, we'll be discussing the answer to that question, which is actually much more complicated than you might think.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
First and foremost, it should be established that the Sith Grand Plan wasn't a consistent, highly specific strategy laid down by Darth Bane and kept unmodified over the course of the Republic Golden Age. While the basis of the plan, that the Sith would arise and destroy the Jedi, remained the same, the details varied wildly, which stemmed from the fact that Bane didn't even have a plan for the endgame at all. The Sith Grand Plan that we ultimately saw and was ultimately carried out by Darth Sidious differed wildly, for example, from Darth Plagueis's, which simply involved seizing control of the Republic and stripping power from the Jedi. And from that, Darth Tenebrous, Plagueis's master, had a goal that was to advance technology to the point where the Force became obsolete. Just as Sidious's view of the plan differed massively from those of the two Dark Lords that predated him, Darth Tyrannus' view of the plan was different from that of his master. The catch here, however, was that Tyrannus had been deceived into believing that his plan was the same as Sidious's. In many respects, he was actually right. Sidious was perfectly honest about everything right up until the Battle of Coruscant, and about a great many of what would come after, including the annihilation and demonization of the Confederacy and alien species in general, the formation of the Empire, and even the recruitment of Anakin Skywalker. However, the version that Dooku had been told had some major distinctions, as was revealed in, you guessed it, the Revenge of the Sith novelization. And to be completely honest, it would have been interesting to see this version of the Empire come to pass. It would probably have been worse than the actual Empire was, but it was nonetheless a bit more of a novel concept. Allow us to elaborate on this and the other distinctions, starting with the Battle of Coruscant. Dooku actually knew from the beginning that he was supposed to lose his fight with Anakin Skywalker on the Invisible Hand. As he believed it, he was supposed to kill Obi-Wan to push Anakin to the dark side, and then allow himself to be defeated and captured by the young Jedi Knight. You can actually see this at the beginning of the duel. Dooku didn't start taking Anakin and Obi-Wan seriously until they changed forms mid-battle and started forcing him back, something that we did a closer analysis of in an earlier video that we highly recommend you check out. Dooku's death came as a great shock to the man himself. He had expected to be captured and potentially disfigured, but never in a million years would he have imagined that Anakin was so close to darkness that he would go against the Jedi Code and not accept a surrender. Nor did he expect Sidious to push Anakin over the edge, and this blindsided him so badly that, in the novel, Dooku actually begs Palpatine for his life to be spared, and nearly spills the details of the plan. As a fun fact, this was actually going to be in the movie as well, but it was cut because Christopher Lee thought it was unbecoming of the character, which we can't really argue with. Nor, evidently, could George Lucas. In Dooku's view of the plan, he would have been taken back to Coruscant and tried for his crimes against the Republic, only for Palpatine to pull enough strings to get him a decently comfortable situation. To quote his own thoughts, he would sit out the rest of the war in comfort and forswear his former allegiances, abandoning the separatist movement after a publicized mock discovery of the true horrors that his servants had wrought. Gradually, Dooku believed he would work his way through the power structure of the new empire, casting himself as a victim rather than a villain until he was second to only the Emperor himself. The scapegoat for Dooku's crimes, of course, would have been General Grievous. Grievous had already become the face of the Separatists by that point, and to be completely honest, it wouldn't have even been that much of a stretch. Dooku would have sided with the Republic against Grievous, who would have been hunted down and destroyed, and the Separatist movement would have been crushed just as it had been in reality. The similarities with reality more or less extended to the destruction of the Jedi, of course, as Dooku was responsible for that part of the plan in the first place. An interesting note is that Dooku's vision of the Empire was actually more humanocentrist than the actual Empire was, something our friends over at Generation Tech would be pleased to learn. Dooku believed that the end of the Clone Wars would see all aliens crushed, stripped of all they possessed, and their systems and their wealth would be given into the hands of human beings, to quote. We could go further into how specious Dooku actually was deep down, but suffice it to say that we don't think there's been worse in the entire modern history of the galaxy. Dooku's vision of what the Empire would be is the interesting part. As we said, he wanted it to be an empire of men, the embodiment of pure authority, something that the Empire kinda tried to be, but only really went halfway on. What's more interesting is that Dooku viewed it more as a traditional Sith Empire, where the Order of the Sith Lords would play a much more public role than they did in reality. This makes sense. The Galactic Empire as it came to be was really something unprecedented, as it was more of a pure empire and less of a Sith theocracy. But the specifics of Dooku's vision are rather interesting, and this is where Anakin comes into play. As we mentioned earlier, Dooku knew that Sidious had been working to turn Anakin to the dark side, and Dooku knew that he was supposed to be the final push in achieving this goal. This, of course, begs the question of why Dooku didn't expect his death was involved, given the rule of two. The answer to that is that Dooku didn't really care for the rule of two, as his dark acolytes showed, and he knew that, in all honesty, Sidious didn't either. He saw Skywalker as the instrument that would destroy the Jedi Order, an evolved version of Ventress in a sense. Skywalker already had been set up as the hero of the Republic, and Dooku knew that his capture would only bolster this. Dooku was under the impression that Skywalker, once turned, would be a double agent for the Sith. The tragedy of Obi-Wan's death would have made him even more of a magnet for HoloNet interviews, in which he believed Skywalker would make the case for the Empire to the masses and delicately hint that the Jedi Order was becoming the problem. And once said order was destroyed, the true fun would have begun, because this is where Dooku's idea of the future really gets interesting. Dooku believed that Sidious's empire would be more like Revan's. There would be two Dark Lords of the Sith, but a small army of Sith apprentices and Dark Jedi under them, something that had worked pretty well for Revan and Malak after him. Dooku believed that the remnants of the Jedi Order and all other Force sensitives would be organized into a new order entirely, the Sith Army, with none other than Anakin Skywalker as its commanding general. Skywalker would be the poster boy of the Empire, the hero of its military, and the destroyer of all that opposed the Sith. The Sith army would be the fist of the Empire, a legion of Darksiders forcibly recruited from across the galaxy, the crown jewel of the massive Imperial military that the Sith had already begun to create. And honestly, if Dooku was right about this, it would have been a hell of a lot cooler than the Empire ended up being. There's something uniquely terrifying about General Skywalker leading an army of Sith, crushing all dissent, leading stormtroopers into battle, and of course, eliminating any and all sand from the galaxy. As per usual, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that Dooku's version of the Empire was cooler than reality? And more importantly, have we convinced you to read the Revenge of the Sith novelization yet? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out all the links in the description below if you want to check out my second history channel, which has a lot of interesting history stories that many people haven't heard about, and of course all the other links that relate to our gaming network and our Discords where you can chat with other Star Wars fans and of course play games with them as well. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.